92. We're going to graph, oh, I'm going to put a 3 in front yet too. There we go. 3 times negative 1/2 x cubed. So on these questions where no graph is given, what you need to be able to do is say, I recognize what kind of graph it is from the equation. And I'll start off with drawing a little picture of that parent graph. Because this was one of the ones, y equals x cubed, that we did on those colored sheets at the beginning. So just off to the side, I'm going to say I know what it looks like. It had 0, 0, 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 8, 2, comma 8. It had this shape, 0, 0, 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1. I'll label a couple of the points. So we need to have that basic graph, its shape, memorized so that we can quickly draw the points and label them. I mean, you can figure out the points by plugging them into the equation. And then we're going to look at our equation here and say, what's happening? What's that 3 going to do? Is it inside the function or outside the function? Outside. So it's going to affect our y values. We're going to multiply our y values by 3. What about the negative 1/2? That's inside, horizontal reflection and a horizontal stretch. We're going to multiply our x values by a negative and 2 over 1, negative 2. So then we can take the points on our original graph, and we don't, like usually 2 or 3 are going to be enough. The 0, 0, that's a very important one. Oh, my original graph was green. 0, 0 is important. Maybe I'll take 1, comma 1 and negative 1, negative 1. Sometimes you choose the points based on what you're going to do. But I look in the black, I'm going to multiply by 3 and multiply by negative 2. Makes sense just to keep the small ones. I'm not multiplying. If I was multiplying y by 1/4, I'd probably choose 2, comma 8. Because it's easier to multiply by 1/4 and it'll end up with fractions. So now I take those points, draw my arrows. Above my arrows, I'm going to say, I know I'm going to multiply y by 3 and x by negative 2. Well, this one's staying 0, 0. This one's going to become negative 2, comma 3. And this one's going to become positive 2, comma negative 3. And once I have those new points, I'm going to draw a new graph. I'm going to label 0, 0. And negative 2, comma 3. And 2, comma negative 3. Put arrowheads on the end of my graph. Does it look like, okay, maybe I'm going to go up here in black and just say this one was a horizontal reflection and horizontal stretch. This one was a vertical stretch. Can you see the horizontal reflection based on the original? And the stretches are a little bit harder to see. Okay, so here's my final graph. Now I'm going to tell you that in my final graph, on my final exam, I would have gotten an E9 error. E9 is all the graphing errors. E9 error if you forget arrowheads, and I also made another E9 error on this one. Does anybody know what error I made? I didn't label my points, okay? And this one is like, because we're like, I do this, you do that, we all, as soon as you go ticky ticky, what did you do? You went 1, 2, and you went ticky ticky ticky. When you went down, you went 1, 2, 3 down. In your head, it makes sense that this point is 2, comma negative 3, right? You would almost say it's obvious. But the exam would say, we don't know if you're not counting by 2s, or maybe you decided to count by 7,000s, right? And so you need to have some sort of indicator of your scale. And labeling your points is probably the easiest way to do that. You have to be careful, though, that if you label a point on your x-axis, it doesn't give your y scale. So you have to have something that indicates your scale on your x values and something that indicates your scale on your y values. Some people, after they draw their ticky marks, they put a 1 here and a 1 there, and then that is enough. Then you wouldn't have to label your points. But I think it's probably easiest and best just to label your points. I guess if you wanted to be really mean to the exam markers, which technically is me, but you could have just went like this, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and labeled that one as 13. And I'd have to figure it out that it was going by ones. Or you could make
it like 12 ticks and then mark it.
yes, and then it would be really bad. And then you'd probably lose an E9 error anyways. But that's how that is working.